Colorado Supreme Court has disqualified Donald Trump and removed his name from the upcoming Republican presidential primary. In a bombshell 4-3 decision, the court cited Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, better known as the Insurrection Clause, which states that officers who have sworn an oath to the United States are not allowed to hold public office after trying to commit an insurrection against the United States. Now, this ruling was actually overturning another ruling from a lower court that said Trump did incite an insurrection but couldn't be barred from the ballot because it's not really clear if the president is an officer of the United States. Because who knows what the founding fathers intended when they meant insurrection. And this comes after a few shocking days for Trump, where he said immigrants are poisoning the blood of the people of this country, quoting Hitler, kind of like his favorite rapper. And obviously, without a doubt, he's appealing this decision. So the ruling is actually on hold till January 4th, where the U.S. Supreme Court will probably hear it and decide on the matter. However, the thing is, this has to be solved by January 5th. That's what state officials are saying, because that's actually the deadline to print all of the state's primary ballots. With Trump's legal spokeswoman saying in a statement, "This ruling issued by the Colorado Supreme Court attacks the very heart of this nation's democracy. It will not stand. We trust that the Supreme Court will reverse this unconstitutional order." But but they're using the constitution. What the fuck? Sure, okay, unconstitutional order. And listen, the reactions from the political spectrum are obviously at like an 11. The reactions from a lot of GOP politicians and pundits is,
"Oh, they're trying to steal the election. This is election interference."
Because apparently every fucking mirror in their house is broken. People on the left celebrating like,
this is the end. Colorado has delivered us. The witch is gone. We've won. We've won.
A lot of progressives and cynics like, is this really going to matter? Like, we know where it's going. Is this going to matter at all? Ramaswamy issuing a video where he's, I don't know, in a fucking jet, or I don't know where the fuck he is, demanding that Donald Trump be reinstated onto the Colorado ballot, calling on his other, honestly, like, what this is? He's like an NPC. He's the most predictable shit. And amidst all the chaos and the cynicism, what does this actually mean? Is this at all significant? Like, is this just posturing? Is this an impeachment that goes nowhere? Is this a political hit that doesn't really do anything? Is it all of those things? So first off, this is actually kind of a big fucking deal. There are lawsuits everywhere about getting Donald Trump kicked off of ballots, citing the insurrection clause, citing various different things. This is the first lawsuit in history that has gone this far for a former president. That's a big deal. It opens up the floodgates for other states to give this a shot. It has the precedent for these rulings to continue to happen. It's kind of like diabetes. Once it's in your family forever. That is a weird metaphor, but it actually fucking works. And I was kind of a little bit confused, right? And of course, then the decision turns to the Supreme Court. What is the Supreme Court going to say about all of this? And before I started recording this video, I saw a lot of different opinions that I was kind of looking through, like people talking about like, well, all of a sudden people aren't about states' rights. And I thought about specifically the electoral system and the way our elections are administered, because elections are administered by state. It's up to the state to run the election how they see fit. If the Supreme Court strikes down this court's ruling, does that materially change election administration? Does it like, that's a serious question. There's so many precedents and historic moments like kind of happening here. It's not all pablum, but I did want to get a second check on it. So I called a friend of mine. His name is David Graham. He goes by Ultradavid. He's a lawyer who's worked in the game industry, but he has a real interest specifically in what's been going on constitutionally in the United States over the last few years. And he's a good friend of mine. So I gave David a call, because I'm one of those dumbasses who doesn't like to text, to get his opinion on the case itself and what precedents it could break, the way it's looking, all of that. He was gracious enough to give me his opinion and his time. Does that have any effect on precedent for states' laws in terms of administering elections on their own? Like,
there are definitely federal laws, and there are many federal decisions that are about state electioneering. I mean, that is been going on for a long time. So the idea that the Supreme Court would step in and make a different choice than a state court made is not unique or new or anything.
Got you.
Even federal legislation, I guess Civil Rights Act is what comes to mind, but there's lots of others, are about state elections. They're about what states can do. They're about federal preemption of state rules. Before part of it was overruled this century by John Roberts, et cetera. The federal government definitely has stuff to say about states and their elections. It's not like they get free reign. As far as this particular decision goes, if it's just about whether the president is an officer or not, it seems to me like, although it sounds pretty clear that the president should be an officer, it seems like pretty absurd that he might not be. If he's not, that's a very narrow case. The Supreme Court could make that case decision in a way that would really not apply to anything else unless another president was also in the same boat. You know, like it doesn't need to be the case that the decision is any wider or any broader than just the president is not an officer for the purposes of this particular part of the Constitution.
And look, David isn't like a constitutional scholar, but he is a lawyer and he does follow this stuff pretty closely. He does understand like the meta of the law. So I pretty much asked him about the elephant in the room.
I mean, if what you're getting at is if they make a nakedly political decision, like does that have consequences? Is that the question?
I think that's kind of the question. If that makes it, I don't know if I phrased that right.
Yeah, that's fine. I certainly expect them to make a political decision. I mean, I would be very surprised if they said that Trump could be taken off of the ballot, because that's what it is, right? Like it's not just about what the reasoning is, right? It's not just as much about the ends as it is about the means, and probably more so about the ends, in my opinion. These justices basically have ideas that they want to do, and then they sort of come up with how they're going to get there in their legal reasoning. So I certainly expect for them to come up with the idea that Trump does not need, that he should not be disqualified. And the question is, how do you get there? If it's just saying that he's not an officer, that seems really easy. I mean, stupid, but, you know, it's an easy thing to do, certainly. I mean, the court is politics. That's what law is. Law is politics. It is nice to believe that it's something else, but it's politics. Whenever there's a court case that's kind of on the margins, which are the interesting cases that Supreme Courts get, appeals courts gets, and, you know, Supreme Court, those are cases that are the most political because they're on the margins of like who gets the resources or who gets the rights or, you know, that kind of stuff. So of course it's political. It was political when, you know, the court was making decisions that I think were good politically in the 50s and 60s. Those were politics. And it's political now when the court's making decisions that I think are bad.
Yeah, it's not fun to hear. Not that any of this is fun, right? Like, look, when you talk to lawyers, especially about the law versus pundits, you see a very different interpretation and view of it. Because pundits will tell you the law is the law, you have to follow the law and you won't get hurt. But lawyers will tell you the law is imperfect. Most lawyers, which if you go to Irvine, you can just throw a stone and find one. And hearing that the Supreme Court is like inherently political isn't surprising. We've seen it for a long fucking time. It's 9 people who live forever and get to tell you how your life goes under the guise of like, well, this is what we think is in the Constitution.
So what's the repercussion? I mean, that's just their system. And it would take very, very large change in the system for there to be any significant consequences in ways that the justices would feel. I mean, definitely in ways that the Republican Party would feel. We have to have a huge overhaul of the system for that to be the case.
I don't really do breakdowns about Donald Trump all that much on this channel, honestly. Like, I've dissed him a lot in like songs. I'll do a throwaway diss here or there, but I don't really like spend an extended amount of time on Donald Trump. Mainly because we all know it. Like, it's the emperor has no clothes. Like, even people who are fervently for him, a lot of people who like cape for this shit and are like, oh, he did nothing wrong, it's an election steal. They know what this is. They're not really arguing about whether this is a fair thing or an unfair thing, or whether he's a racist or not a racist, or whether immigrants are poisoning the blood of this nation is fucked up. They're not really arguing that. In their minds, they're arguing traditional values versus non-traditional values. They feel like if America is like this, all of my problems and all of everyone's problems will be solved. And you're just too fucking stupid and you want to oppose it, so you're evil. And this is their guy. A lot of their fear is that they're going to lose everything and the world will turn topsy-turvy because people in cities revel at their misfortune. And this guy is supposed to be the guy to get them out of this. When you live in a desperate situation like that, of course you're going to latch onto it. Of course there are bad faith people who are racist and latching onto him for that and all that. 100%, like, yeah, we know. But by and large, a lot of the people you see who are in that culture war grift are there because they're legitimately scared. But we are in this state of polarization where somebody can invoke Hitler and cause an insurrection, and we're parsing words about, well, did he really invoke Hitler? Is it really like, bro? It's kind of like the Kanye West story I talked about the other day. Motherfucker's still caping for Kanye when he literally like shouts out Hitler. Yeah, I think that's kind of fucking weird, bro. Just call it what it is. You value his music over dealing with his comments. I just don't like this beating around the bush for everything. But listen, even if the Supreme Court exonerates him and he's like, oh no, I can be on the Colorado ballot, even if there's a big hoopla and a bunch of other lawsuits filed, I think the one thing that we should really keep an eye on is this narrative that Donald Trump is untouchable. Because let's be very honest, these effects do have a weight on him. There was a poll that said, if Trump is found to be a criminal, will you still vote for him? And a large majority were like, nah. Trump's involvement has resulted in a tepid red wave, a loss of the incumbency advantage in 2020. That's a huge fucking deal. Rare blue political environments and off-year elections like this last election, Donald Trump has a lot of scars on him. In fact, the only thing that's actually helping him right now is Biden. But I don't know, man. Even with the idea that the Supreme Court could do their thing, I don't think that's an easy stretch or a victory for him, really. This is unprecedented to be taken off of a ballot like that. This broke yesterday. We're going to have to wait and see where it goes. But I do think it is something that we should all keep an eye on. Also, I do believe David. He's a super smart guy. But I also do think that the court has a reputation that it's trying to shed because, man, they got hammered pretty badly over the last year. And extreme decisions by the court have actually hurt Republicans on the ballot. So even as the cynics we are, if everything goes according to plan, it doesn't mean it's going to work out like you think it should. That's my thoughts on this. I came back from vacation and yes, I shaved and it was an accident. I was just trying to trim the beard and then I used the full fucking razor instead of the clip guard. And now I look like this. So hi, this is Zaid with a slightly shaven stubble. If you like this, let me know. If you don't, but anyway, my name is Tabani. Follow me on TikTok, Instagram, anywhere, your mom's house. And stay tuned for Freestyle of the Year, not this week, but next week. And I'll see y'all soon. Let's go!